Appreciate each of the witnesses taking the time to be here today. I have to say, for any political party, when they have power in the Senate, the topics they choose to focus on reflect their priorities. This is, by my count, the sixth hearing either the Senate Judiciary Committee or this subcommittee has held, focused on federalizing elections, focused on what is the Democrats' number one priority in this Congress, and that is seizing power and ensuring that Democrats stay in power for the next 100 years. It is striking that the Democrats' proposals are not focused on protecting the right to vote, but rather are focused on striking down provisions that prevent voter fraud, striking down provisions that protect the integrity of elections, and instead, what the Democrats are seeking to do is expand voter fraud and disempower the voters from voting Democrats out of office. It is cynical, it is misguided, but it's also transparent. It speaks volumes that that's their priority, despite the fact that there are other pressing topics that we should be addressing, rather than an illegitimate Democratic power grab. And there is no crisis greater within this committee's jurisdiction than the crisis unfolding at our southern border. We are 10 months into the Biden administration. We're 10 months into the disaster at the southern border caused by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. In those 10 months, the Judiciary Committee has held 0 hearings on the chaos on the southern border. In those 10 months, the Judiciary Committee not interested in hearing about it. It's the Sergeant Schultz defense. I see nothing, I hear nothing. We're on a path for over 2 million people to cross the border illegally this year, the highest rate in 21 years, actually just crossing into the highest rate in 35 years. The Democrats, no hearings. For 4 years under President Trump, we heard every Democrat go on TV talking about kids in cages, kids in cages. And I suppose a reasonable observer might have thought they believed what they were saying. We now know they didn't. Why is that? Because the Biden cages, I've been to the Biden cages. The Biden cages are more full and bigger than they ever have been. And to the best of my knowledge, not a single Democratic member of this Senate has bothered to even go see the kids in cages. They only cared about it when it was an attack on their political opponents and the hundreds of thousands of little boys and little girls locked in cages, getting COVID, being subject to physical and sexual assault by traffickers. The Democrats don't care. The hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants being released across this country, many with COVID. The Democrats don't care. Yesterday, I introduced a bill that might adjust their priorities. It's a bill called the Stop the Surge Act, and it does a very simple thing. It simply creates 13 additional points of entry. One of the reasons the Democrats don't care about the chaos that's unfolding in my state, the state of Texas, is because it's far away. They don't have to see the cages filled with kids. They don't have to see the schools bursting at the seams. They don't have to see the hospitals packed beyond capacity. They don't have to see law enforcement broke and unable to deal with it. It's somebody else's problem. Well, Stop the Surge Act creates 13 additional points of entry in places where Democrats live, including Greenwich, Connecticut, the chairman's home state, but also including places like Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and Newport, Rhode Island. And it's very easy for Democrats to say, you silly Texans, you silly people in the rest of the country, you shouldn't worry about that. I feel quite confident Senate Democrats would feel differently if each and every week 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 illegal immigrants were being dropped off in Greenwich, Connecticut. Suddenly you would see a cry, this is a crisis. And yet, because it's just Del Rio, Texas, I've been to Del Rio, Texas. To the best of my knowledge, there's not a Democrat in this body that's been to Del Rio, Texas. Del Rio, Texas is a little town, 35,000 people. On one day, there were over 15,000 illegal immigrants, mostly from Haiti, under the bridge in Del Rio, half the population of the city. And Democrats don't care. It is scandalous that we have been nearly a year without a single hearing, without a single Democrat going to the Rio Grande Valley. And instead, what is their priority? Their priority is keeping Democrats in power. Now, this hearing, the sixth one on federalizing elections, in this instance, it's focused on the Native American community. Native American community is a wonderful community across the country of various tribes in each state. It's a community that over history has endured brutality. It's endured discrimination. But in the face of it all, these communities have proved resilient at the same time. I see it in Texas, where we have tribes with reservations like the Alabama Coushatta, the Kickapoo, the Isleta del Sur Pueblo. But in Texas and elsewhere across the country, state officials are working with the tribes to meet their voting needs, to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to vote. Wyoming Secretary of State Edward Buchanan is here today. It's good to see you, Mr. Secretary. And I expect that he will tell the committee about this process and how it's already working to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to vote. There's no need for a complete overhaul of voting on tribal lands. But that's what Democrats are pushing, a complete overhaul of voting laws. And yet again, they're doing it for purely partisan gain. The Democrats are hell-bent on undermining voter integrity and rigging the system to favor Democrats. They first tried the most brazen power grab in living memory when they attempted to pass S1, the first bill that was Chuck Schumer's number one priority, the Corrupt Politicians Act. A bill designed to take powers away from citizens to register millions of illegal aliens, to strike down voter ID laws, to expand ballot harvesting. They tried the same thing in S4. Their next attempt, which would allow radical leftists in the Department of Justice, unappointed bureaucrats, to strike down any voter integrity law they wished, again designed to expand the frequency of voter fraud because, sadly, my Democratic colleagues have made the judgment that the more fraud that occurs, the more it will benefit Democrats. This week, the Senate right now is voting on their revised version of the Corrupt Politicians Act. It's only a little less corrupt. This is the same Democratic operative playbook, complete with ballot harvesting, complete with drop boxes set in the middle of nowhere that invite fraud, and complete with mailing out absentee ballots that voters didn't request. And let's be clear, there used to be consensus that election integrity mattered. There used to be consensus that voter fraud was a bad thing. The last major bipartisan commission to consider voter fraud was the Carter-Baker Commission. It was chaired by former Democratic President Jimmy Carter and former Republican Secretary of State James Baker. Carter-Baker Commission, it's worth rereading what they concluded. It's worth rereading their recommendations because the Carter-Baker Commission concluded voter fraud is real, it is a threat, it undermines the integrity of elections. It recommended, among other things, photo ID for elections to prevent voter fraud. It also listed the practices that contribute to voter fraud, that undermine ballot integrity. One of the principal ones it focuses on was ballot harvesting, the practice of corrupt, paid political operatives collecting the ballots of others, because history has shown that invites fraud and potentially fraud on a wide-scale basis. It focuses on widespread mail-in voting as inviting voter fraud. What is striking about today's Democratic agenda, some 20 years later, It is almost as if they went down the recommendations of the Carter-Baker Commission. How do we prevent voter fraud? And they inverted every recommendation. The only reasonable explanation is they looked at that for a blueprint. How do we get more voter fraud? Let's do the opposite of what the Carter-Baker Commission recommended. And I will point out again, the last I checked, Jimmy Carter was a Democrat. So their notion that being concerned about voter fraud is some crazy right-wing conspiracy is utterly ahistorical. We should protect every American's right to vote. We should protect Native Americans' right to vote. We should protect the right of every American to vote. But the right to vote is undermined if Democrats succeed in striking down voter integrity laws and federalizing elections and in implementing practices that we know will expand voter fraud. When an illegal voter votes illegally, he or she is stealing the right to vote from American citizens who have that legal right. And it's not just me who said that. That was the majority opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court in the decision upholding the state of Indiana's photo ID laws. I represented the state of Texas and a number of other states in that litigation. The majority opinion by Justice John Paul Stevens, another lion of the left, explained that photo ID laws protect the integrity of elections, and when voter fraud occurs, it steals the vote from legal citizens. I don't know why the Democrats don't care about the crisis on the border. I don't know why the Democrats don't care about the children in the Biden cages today. I don't know why the Democrats don't care about the hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens with COVID that are coming into this country. I don't know why the Democrats don't care about the terrorists and gang members and violent criminals coming into this country. I don't know why the Democrats don't care about the human suffering their policies are causing. But what I do know is the Democrats today care about stealing elections. And there is no agenda item that is a higher priority than that. And let me note finally, the full Judiciary Committee should hold multiple hearings on the crisis on the border. But this subcommittee, the Constitution Subcommittee, should likewise hold hearings on that same topic. Article 2 of the Constitution provides that the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. We have had presidents in the past who were reluctant to enforce immigration laws. Barack Obama was lousy at it. He created illegal categorical exemptions where he wouldn't enforce the law. But Obama never attempted what is happening now, what Joe Biden is doing right now, wholly refusing to follow federal immigration law, ordering his political subordinates, do not follow the law, do not enforce the law. It is brazenly illegal. It is brazenly unconstitutional. It is a violation of the Take Care Clause of the Constitution. And it is creating a constitutional crisis in this country because states like my home state of Texas are facing this crisis. And a president is utterly